They called him the heretic, the mad Pharaoh, the betrayer of Egypt. His name erased from stone, his city abandoned to the desert, his story buried in silence for more than 3,000 years. And yet, the sands cannot bury the sun, nor can silence kill a memory. This is the tale of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who tried to erase the gods themselves, the man who nearly shattered an empire for a dream. 2,000 years before his birth, Egypt had worshipped the same gods. The Nile flowed, steady as breath. The people prayed to Ammonius, Ra, Isis, Osiris, Horus. Every city had its patron deity. Every household had its shrine. Every priest had his power. And among them all, one name ruled supreme. Ammonius, the hidden god, lord of the temples of Thebes, the god whose priests grew wealthier than kings. By the time young Amenhotep IV was born, Egypt was at its height. The empire stretched from Nubia in the south to Syria in the north. Gold poured in from mines and tribute. Vassal kings sent their loyalty written on clay tablets, sealed in foreign tongues, begging for favor from Pharaoh. The temples shone with treasures. Processions of priests filled the streets, chanting prayers that never ended. The great Karnak temple, devoted to Ammonius, rose like a mountain of stone. Its columns reached higher than the palm trees of the Nile. Its walls painted with victories of Pharaoh's past, its sanctuaries heavy with incense, with gold, with silence. The smell of burning offerings hung in the air. The voices of thousands rose to the heavens. The gods were everywhere, everywhere, except in the heart of one boy, Amenhotep IV, a prince born to the greatest of pharaohs, Amenhotep III, and Queen Tai. From the beginning, he was different. His features were strange. Long face, narrow limbs, wide hips. Unlike the statues of warriors carved before him. Unlike the gods he was meant to resemble. The people whispered. Some said he was cursed. Others said he was chosen. But in the shadow of temples, in the endless wealth of priests, the young prince saw something else. Something hidden. Something dangerous. Power. The priests of Ammonius did not bow to Pharaoh. Pharaoh bowed to them. Their wealth was endless. Their reach unchallenged. Their whispers louder than the throne itself. And somewhere, deep inside, the boy who would become Akhenaten swore an oath. He would break them. He would break the gods themselves. Long pause. The camera lingers on the rising sun above the Nile. But no one could yet imagine how far he would go. No one could yet see the madness of the dream. The year is 1353 BC. Amenhotep IV ascends the throne of Egypt. He inherits a kingdom at its height. An empire feared, respected, envied. The people expect another warrior pharaoh. A conqueror like Thutmose, a builder like his father. They expect continuity, stability, the old ways. But from the beginning, he is different. On the day of his coronation, he steps into the great temple of Karnak. The air is thick with incense. The colossal columns rise above him, carved with the victories of kings long gone. Statues of Ammonius tower like giants. Priests chant in endless waves, their voices rising into the gloom of the sanctuary. Gold glitters. Torches flicker. The god's presence feels heavy in the air. And there, in the most sacred chamber of Egypt, Amenhotep IV bows his head. But not to Ammonius. He lifts his eyes higher, to the light spilling through the cracks of the temple roof, to the sun itself, the blazing disk that gives life to all things. In that moment, the first spark of revolution burns. At first, it seems harmless. The young pharaoh dedicates a shrine, not to Ammonius, but to Aten, the god of the visible sun, a radiant disk with hands stretching downward, holding life in its rays. The priests frown, but they do not yet resist. Pharaohs have always honored many gods. One more would not matter, or so they think, but the prayers grow louder. The offerings increase. Soon Aten is not one god among many. He is the only god the pharaoh praises. In hymns carved into stone, Akhenaten calls him the source of all life, the sole giver of breath, of food, of light, the father of Egypt, the father of all. And then, the pharaoh himself changes. No longer does he call himself Amenhotep. The name means Ammonius is satisfied, but Ammonius is no longer welcome. Ammonius must vanish. He renames himself Akhenaten, effective for Aten. It is not only a name, it is a declaration of war. The priests are furious. Their god has been insulted, their wealth threatened, their very existence questioned. But Akhenaten does not stop. He orders the names of Ammonius erased from walls, chiseled out of stone, struck from monuments. Even the name of his own father is attacked, because it contains the hated word, Ammonius. Never before has Egypt seen such blasphemy. The gods themselves, erased by their king. And yet, Akhenaten is not finished. He turns his back on Thebes, on Karnak, on the temple that had stood for centuries. He will not share his god with their city. Instead, he chooses a barren stretch of desert, flat land, unclaimed by any other deity, a place where no god had ever ruled. Here, he says, Aten will rise. Here, his new world will be built. The city is called Akhenaten, the horizon of Aten. Day after day, workers toil in the sun. Stones hauled, walls raised, temples carved. Unlike the dark sanctuaries of Ammonius, these temples have no roofs. They are wide open, so that the rays of Aten can fall directly upon the altars. At the city's heart stand a palace. Inside, paintings cover the walls. Not of gods, not of battles, but of family. Akhenaten, his queen Nefertiti, and their daughters, shown in intimate detail, laughing, embracing, kissing beneath the sun's rays. This is something new. Pharaohs had always been distant, divine, carved in perfection. But Akhenaten shows himself as human. A husband, a father, a servant of the sun. The people are astonished. Some are inspired. Some are horrified. But no one can ignore it. The revolution is complete. Egypt has one god, Aten, and one voice to speak for him, Akhenaten. From the desert sands, a miracle has risen. Akhenaten, the horizon of Aten. Here, the pharaoh rules not as a distant god-king cloaked in shadows, but as a prophet beneath the sun. Every morning, Akhenaten steps into the open temple, his queen, Nefertiti, at his side, their daughters clinging to their robes. Together they raise their arms, while the blazing disk of Aten stretches its rays down, each ending in a hand holding the ankh, the breath of life. The priests of Ammonius are gone, the old god silent. Only the sun remains. In the streets, murals bloom with images never seen before. Gone are the rigid, perfect poses of Pharaoh's past. Here are tender scenes. Akhenaten kissing his queen, Nefertiti cradling a child, the Pharaoh's daughters playing with jewelry, laughing, their heads thrown back in joy. It is as if Egypt itself has changed its heart, as if the sun has remade the very soul of art. But beauty cannot silence hunger. Faith cannot replace bread. Beyond the shining walls of Amarna, the empire groans. Vassal kings in Canaan and Syria send desperate letters to their pharaoh. Clay tablets, written in Akkadian, the language of diplomacy. They beg for soldiers. They beg for gold. They beg for help. One cries, "The Hittites press upon us. My city burns. If Pharaoh does not send men, we are lost." Another pleads, "The neighboring kings rebel. Without Egypt, we cannot hold. Why has Pharaoh abandoned us?" Letter after letter, cry after cry. But Akhenaten does nothing. The Amarna letters, found centuries later in the ruins of a city, tell a chilling truth. While Aten's prophet sang hymns to the sun, the empire his ancestors had built was burning. Enemies rose where once they had bowed. Cities that had sent tribute for generations turn away. The Hittites surged like a storm, swallowing lands that had been Egypt's for 100 years. And still, Akhenaten sent no armies. No estid, no stid. The generals raged. The soldiers cursed. They trained in silence and used, unwanted, for the pharaoh believed there was only one war worth fighting, the war against the gods themselves. And so his eyes never turned outward, only upward. But inside Amarna, cracks began to spread. The people were uneasy. Where were the festivals of Osiris? Where were the processions of Ammonius? Where were the feasts in the name of Isis, the prayers to Horus, the offerings to Hathor? Now, there was only Aten, a faceless disk in the sky, a god who could not be touched, could not be carved, could not be seen in human form, a god who gave light but no comfort. And so, whispers filled the streets. The old gods were angry. They had been betrayed. They would punish Egypt. Then punishment came. The Nile faltered. Its waters shrank. Fields cracked and withered. Harvests failed, and famine followed. In the shining city of Amarna, the people starved. Children cried for bread. Mothers wept in silence. The great city of the sun was drowning in hunger. And still, Akhenaten raised his arms to Aten. Still he sang his hymns. Still he gazed upward, blind to the suffering below. And in the darkness of famine, another shadow crept across Egypt. The plague. It came without warning. Some said it spread from the lands of Canaan. Others whispered it was the curse of the forgotten gods. But it spread with fire speed, from village to village, from city to city, until no house, no palace, no temple was safe. Bodies burned in heaps. Funeral chants never ceased. Priests worked day and night, desperate to calm gods who no longer listened. Even the royal palace was struck. Daughters of Akhenaten fell. Some say 3 of them perished in a single year. Their painted faces on the walls of Amarna suddenly stopped appearing. The joy of their laughter replaced by silence. And what of Nefertiti, the great queen, the beloved wife? Her face had once shone across every wall. Her beauty unmatched, her power unquestioned. But suddenly, she was gone. Her image disappeared. Her name struck from inscriptions. Some say she died in the plague. Others whisper she turned against her husband. And some believe she ruled in secret, wearing the mask of Pharaoh herself. But the truth is lost, swallowed by the silence of Amarna. Akhenaten stood alone, his city crumbling, his people starving, his family fading, and his empire breaking apart. Still, he looked only to the sun. Still, he prayed to Aten. But Aten gave no answer. The horizon of Aten was dying. The Nile had always been Egypt's lifeline. Its floods brought black silt. Its waters gave life. But now the river shrank. Its gift withheld. The fields lay barren. The people cried out for grain. And in Amarna, the city of the sun, hunger spread like fire. Mothers begged for food in the markets. Men sold their last possessions for a handful of barley. Children wasted away in silence. Once the Pharaoh had promised them heaven on earth. Now they saw only dust, only famine, only death. But famine was only the beginning. The plague had no mercy. It struck rich and poor alike. It entered huts and palaces with the same hand. It did not fear walls, nor priests, nor pharaohs. They burned bodies in pits. The smoke blackened the sky, but still the dead piled higher. Still the chants of mourning echoed day and night. And in the palace itself, Aten's chosen family was struck. One daughter gone, then another, then another. The walls of Amarna, once filled with laughter, fell silent. The royal tombs carved in the cliffs filled too quickly. Little sarcophagi were carried into the darkness. The people whispered, "The gods are punishing Pharaoh." The priests muttered, "The old gods demand vengeance." Even Nefertiti, the radiant queen, vanished. Some say the plague took her. Some say she turned against her husband, his dream now a nightmare. And others whisper she ruled Egypt in secret, wearing the crown of Pharaoh as her husband crumbled. But Akhenaten? He stood apart, gaunt, haunted, a prophet without a people. He still sang hymns to the sun. He still raised his arms each dawn. But the people no longer listened. His city no longer believed. His empire no longer obeyed. For outside Egypt, the world was shifting. The Hittites crushed his allies. Cities that once sent gold to Thebes now sent tribute north. Egypt's generals wrote desperate reports. But the Pharaoh ignored them. He had no army left. No loyal priests. No allies of oath. Only Aten. And Aten was silent. So the generals began to whisper. The priests began a plot. Even in his court, betrayal took root. The Pharaoh had turned his back on the old gods. But the old gods were not forgotten. Not by the soldiers. Not by the people. not by those who had lost their children, their crops, their homes. And as famine gnawed, and plague devoured, and enemies rose, they waited for the sun to set on the prophet of Aten. And then, one day it did. Akhenaten died. How, no one knows. Some say sickness claimed him. Others whisper poison. Others still, a secret coup. But what is certain is that his end was quiet. No great procession. No thunder drums. No golden tomb like his ancestors. He was buried hastily in the cliffs of Amarna. The pharaoh who tried to erase the gods was himself erased. His city was abandoned. His temples left to sand and silence. His name chiseled from stone. It was as if he had never lived. Akhenaten was gone. The prophet of Aten had fallen. But Egypt still lived. The generals returned. The priests returned. The old gods returned. And with them, a boy, Akhenaten, the son of Akhenaten, barely 9 years old when he wore the double crown. He was Pharaoh in name. But in truth, he was a child in the hands of men far older, far hungrier. The generals, the priests, the ones who had watched Egypt nearly collapse under Akhenaten's dream. They whispered in the boy's ear. They guided his hand. And soon, Akhenaten became Tutankhamun. The name said it all. Not living image of Aten, but living image of Ammonius. The restoration had begun. Temples to Aten were abandoned. The city of Amarna left to die in the desert. Priests of Ammonius opened their sanctuaries once more. Festivals returned. Incense burned. The statues of old gods rose again from the rubble. And the name of Akhenaten was cursed. He was branded a heretic. His memory a crime. His monuments torn down. His name hacked from walls. His statues shattered and buried. Egypt's scribes were ordered to erase him. Erase his children. Erase the queen who once stood by his side. Erase an entire chapter of history. It was as if the reign of Akhenaten had never happened. As if the sun had never risen in Amarna. For centuries, no one spoke his name. For centuries, his city slept beneath the sand. The Nile flowed. New pharaohs ruled. And Akhenaten became a ghost. But the past does not stay buried. 3,000 years later, the sand shifted. Explorers dug into the cliffs of Amarna. They found broken shrines, empty tombs, faded hymns carved into stone. Words once meant to glorify Aten, now whispered like echoes across time. Words written by a man who had dreamed of changing the world. And in the Valley of the Kings, they found the boy, Tutankhamun, the child pharaoh who had undone his father's dream. His tomb lay untouched, glittering with gold. His mask, his treasures, his name, remembered forever. But Akhenaten? No golden mask, no riches, no legacy but ruin. And yet, his ghost lingers. Some call him the first monotheist, the first man to see only one god above all. Others call him mad, a fanatic who nearly destroyed his empire. But perhaps he was both, a visionary and a heretic, a prophet and a fool. The desert keeps his secret. The gods keep their silence. And the sun, the very sun he worshipped, still rises over the Nile each morning. Indifferent, eternal, Akhenaten's name was erased, but his shadow remains.